Welcome new returning undergrad and graduate students to the University Counseling Center's presentation on students' strategies to adapt and thrive in fall of 2021. Again, I'm Patricia Becerra, licensed clinical social worker, and I am the crisis care and clinical care coordinator at the University Counseling Center. I've actually been here for the 4 years, and I've been providing crisis walk-in services to students, and my role is to help them stabilize their symptoms and help them get the best treatment that they need. This season, we have noticed that there are many students struggling with grief, loss, anxiety, and depression. And we want to share with you all how to recognize what you are feeling and cope effectively to transition into this new semester with resiliency. So I invite you as we go through the presentation today to be open to what your experience has been and try to see what you can learn to utilize during this season to adapt more effectively. We're going to review emotional wellness, growth mindset, coping skills, creating new meaning, and campus resources. Okay, this past year has affected us all in many ways. As we continue to heal from our losses and look forward to the fall semester, remember that APU is here to help you feel supported, help you recognize your resiliency in this season, and help you prepare to succeed. I'd like you all to just take time to reflect on what you need in all the different areas of your life. When we think about holistic wellness, it consists of 6 broad dimensions of health-related behaviors. That includes spiritual wellness, which is your sense of peace and connectedness with your faith. Emotional wellness, which is related to your own self-identity and self-esteem. Mental wellness, which is your ability to use your creative gifts and being able to engage in stimulating mental activities. Your physical wellness, so that's about what you're eating, your exercise, your sleep, and if you're engaging in any substance use, being aware of that and how it affects you, and your personal hygiene. And then there's social wellness, which is how you feel and perceive your sense of community and social support with others. And then there's also occupational wellness, which is your ability to have satisfaction in the work that you do. Research shows that one protective factor students can continue to develop is their resilience. That's the ability to recognize and withstand or respond to the challenges that present themselves in life. It's the key for all of us in maintaining our mental health. The American Psychological Association recommends several ways people can work to build their resilience. The most important ones include having a strong sense of support. So your support system, so supportive people who will listen to you and be able to share, what your experience is and validate you. Also having a sense of working toward goals by focusing on small steps. So moving forward toward a solution will remind you that you have control over what's happening. And then also developing self-confidence. The more you're able to bounce back from setbacks, the more you'll know that you'll be able to do it the next time you face a hurdle. And here's a list of all the different families of emotions. So looking at the main ones and also thinking just about your experience in this year and a half, right? We've had to quickly adjust to doing online learning, having to shelter in place, and having to just be away from our normal way of doing things in life. Allow yourself right now to just take a moment and connect with what you're feeling right now as you anticipate the start of the fall semester. Maybe recognize how you felt leaving campus in the spring of 2020 and all that you have felt in this past year and a half. And if you feel comfortable, if you're open for us to just dialogue, just share in the chat, what emotion comes up for you during this time. And if you're open to putting it in the chat, we can all kind of see what our experience is. So thank you all. So it's important to recognize that even as we come back to campus, we may experience some students that are at a different place than we are, depending on what their experience was during the pandemic at home. A lot of us may be experiencing this excitement and may lean more to that end, where some of us may be more fearful. Maybe we have families that are higher risk and we're a commuter student and we don't know what life is going to be like having to navigate going back and forth. So when we think about how do we cope during the season, I really want us to lean into thriving. So Thriving shares our own researcher here at APU is Dr. Lori Schreiner, did some research and told us specifically when it comes to college students and thriving, the way a college student can measure their sense of thriving is based on how they feel that they are connected in their academics. And if you perceive that you are thriving, it helps promote academic success. It helps you feel like you belong to the institution, you feel satisfaction with your college, and ultimately you get to graduation, right? It helps retain you when you are thriving. So it boils down to, do I belong? Am I significant? Is what I'm doing meaningful? So what is engaged learning? Engaged learning is a measure of the degree to which students are meaningfully processing what happens in class, energized by what they are learning, and continuing to think about it outside of class. Academic determination is the measure of students' goal directedness, investment of effort, and regulation of their own learning and use of time. And then there's also positive perspective, which is a measure of the student's optimism and explanatory style of how, again, they feel that they belong at school. And then there's social connectedness, a measure of students' involvement in healthy relationships and social support networks, whether on or off campus. And then there's diverse citizenship, a measure of a student's desire to make a difference in the community around them, as well as their openness to difference in others. So when you think of thriving, it really boils down to, what are you able to engage in? This season, it must have been really hard to stay motivated in classes. A lot of us experience virtual burnout, Zoom fatigue. And so maybe it's being intentional this season of really connecting to your professors, really stepping out of your comfort zone and setting up those times to study in a group or working on a group project, ways that will really engage you in the learning process and help you to feel more stimulated. This also might be a great time to explore a new group on campus to be involved in. We have great ethnic student organizations, different ways to do service that you can engage in as well on campus or in the community. And being involved in those things will bring you, a sense of giving and gratitude as you're working alongside others to help those that are most in need. And then when we think specifically to our graduate students, this year has even posed another layer of stress. As graduate students, you may already be managing, being a parent, being a caregiver, a spouse. And the combination of adjusting to the pandemic may have made you feel overwhelmed, discouraged, and unmotivated. So you want to recognize that we have all experienced a collective trauma, and it is normal to have feelings of discouragement, anxiety, and overall burnout. The important piece is to recognize what you have been through and see your resiliency in this time. You have persevered and gained new skills of adaptability, flexibility, and hopefully realize the importance of having a good support system. If you're coming out of this season with continued stress, I encourage you to reach out for help. This is a great time to reach out to your extended family and know that you've needed help. Maybe it's in your caretaking role, or is it with meal prepping? Is there any way someone can come alongside and take off a task off of your plate so that you can feel that you're better managing and balancing everything? Also recognizing, are there ways that you can get support at APU? The University Counseling Center offers great workshops and groups to help students, again, practice their coping skills, or maybe it's engaging in a process group to have some more further support, for your mental health during this time. And again, I also encourage you to meet with your professors if you're having difficulty and let them know that you need support. Our faculty and staff want to be here for the students. We want to make sure that you are thriving and able to succeed. So definitely letting us know in ways in which we can support you. That will start the conversation on what is obtainable. Remember also to practice self-care. So that could be taking time for yourself weekly to rest, restore, and reconnect. Schedule time to call a friend, put in blocks for times to exercise, even plan downtime on the weekend where you get to do things that you enjoy, whether that's hiking, going to the beach, spending time with family and friends. It's so important that you go into the season really taking control of your schedule and knowing how you can use your time as a way of coping better. Lean into your cohort. As a graduate student, you tend to, have stronger relationships with your cohort. And so recognize, is studying with others going to be more beneficial for you? And is there a way to create that study group on campus? Is there a way for you to kind of even just open up, meet with your cohort for coffee or with someone in your program for lunch so that you're sharing what you're experiencing? Ultimately, the more that we share what's going on, the less stress we'll feel, because then we recognize that we're not alone, and then others are able to support us in what we're going through. Again, utilize campus resources. We have the Writing Center, the Tutoring Center, the University Counseling Center, and there's also specifically a platform for graduate students called APU Telehealth from Timely Care, and that even allows you to have on-demand counseling. So say you're feeling really overwhelmed, you have a big project coming up, and it's hard for you to even focus. You can go onto your app and schedule a counselor to meet with that day, and they can review with you deep breathing, come up with a coping plan with you, and that is immediate. So it's not something that you have to wait for. And now we'll transition into learning about growth mindset and how to develop it during this time of transition. This is going to be a 2-minute video that we'll watch. So again, as in the video shared, John Spencer talked about the research that Carol Dweck has done on their growth mindset. So just recognizing, there it is, that there are ways in which we can foster and grow our own growth mindset. So during this time, there's a ability for us to shine a spotlight on your own effort and growth. So again, looking at this 1.5 years and noticing, what did you learn during this time? What did you become more adept at doing? Learning how to, manage Zoom meetings, or, really working well on Google presentations. Noticing the pandemic has created increasingly dynamic workplace, one where learners are frequently faced with new types of tasks and challenges. When we work on a new task, it's easy to get feeling bogged down by the mistakes we make when trying something new. In such situations, just encourage yourselves to pay a close attention to your efforts and acknowledge that with every step you take, you can learn something new. You also want to focus on the process instead of the end goal. So sometimes we quickly want to get to the end and feel like, how am I going to finish this assignment? But it goes back to really like, okay, how can I start with just doing my rough draft or just writing out my key points, and really being noticing that you're doing that and that you're doing that well. And again, this could be the time where you reach out for that support from our writing center. They can help you at any stage in your writing, but just noticing that you're getting a little bit done at a time. Then there's also being able to recognize that if we are really striving to be perfect, that can really hinder our learning process. So even as learners, when we're working on a new task or we're developing a new skill, it's natural, right, to want to do it perfectly, but it can make us feel fearful of making mistakes and an anxiety to do things flawlessly. So such lofty expectations tend to create a feeling of disillusionment when things don't go as planned, which can hamper our motivation. So really practicing on, how do I just do this as best as I can, recognizing that each time I do it, I'm going to get better at it. And then you also want to set your ego aside. So for many learners, the pandemic has created ambiguity in their work. So if you're used to being an expert, you might find yourselves in new territory, and having to grapple with a new situation can feel frustrating. So practice quieting your inner voice of cynicism and defensiveness. The better you are at setting your ego aside, the more quickly you can gain a clear picture of the problem at hand and overcome it. And you also want to explore new types of work. So that's how we also expand our growth mindset, is being able to engage in new tasks and take new risks, and then reward yourself for your actions. So even when you think about that in a social context, maybe this is the time when you step out of your comfort zone and meet somebody new and challenge yourself. And whether that meeting goes well or not, just recognizing like, wow, I was, brave. I went up to someone new. I introduced myself. I asked them open-ended questions, and being able to recognize that you are doing one step differently than maybe what you would have done before. And so that's engaging yourself in building your growth mindset. And then in regards to being able to be ready for being on campus, maybe we want to remind ourselves of the importance, right, of reconnecting and building relationships. The fall semester brings a new space to start healing from what we experienced this past year. Be intentional to ask yourself how you are feeling, what are you looking forward to, and what do you need in this season to thrive and help others along the way. It's important to allow yourself space to process, share your fears, losses, and hopes, and be with those feelings rather than ignore them. We need to learn to be compassionate with ourselves and with others. We also want to reorient ourselves to connect with one another in person. So just to review, skills that maybe we're not used to doing in person live is really the importance of those communication skills. And so that's making eye contact, keeping your body language open and flexible, so not slouched or stiff, practicing listening to the other person speaking without interrupting, nodding your head and providing the nonverbal communication that you are listening, and then reflect back what you heard the person say, acknowledging the feeling expressed. And that's a skill called reflective listening. Then ask for any clarification if needed. And then as we kind of process what this might be like opening back up ourselves for relationships, if you can share one thing in the chat that has affected you most during the season. I know for some of us, the hardest part has been not being able to see anybody, or maybe we live far away and having to be at home has really kept us from that social connection. So if you're open to sharing in the chat, what is one thing that has affected you most during this season? So as we recognize the things that we've missed, hopefully we can also think of how can we intentionally cultivate that. So one of the other pieces that I want to highlight is being able to, why is it my word? Yeah, being able to build and rebuild our support system. When we were at home, maybe we've kind of adapted to like, okay, I'm just going to be alone more and I'm okay with that. But now that we have the opportunity to build relationships again, it's going to be important for us to identify who do we want to connect with. Whether we're a first gen student and we want to connect to a mentor again, or whether we want some discipleship and we want to connect with our campus ministry office to get a spiritual mentor. There's ways to even have a peer mentor. There's also opportunities to mentor others. Our international students office has a great program where students can be peer mentors to international students. So that might be a great way too to kind of step out from the pandemic and say, how can I create a sense of community around others that we come from different backgrounds, and how can we intentionally build those relationships? So even as identified in ways to help students thrive, students need to feel supported. So talking to loved ones can be especially helpful when you're trying to navigate a new transition. So students, don't be afraid to reach out from your, if you need help from your RA, if you live on campus, or even if you're having a hard time building those relationships, if you could benefit from meeting with one of our counselors at the counseling center to explore what's, getting in the way of you being able to connect. Or even if homesickness comes up, it might come up in a different way, right? Because now we've had extended time with our family, and if we're living on campus, that anxiety of missing home may come up for us. And so if you need a safe place to process, we again have those groups and workshops that can assist with this transition. And we'll also be offering workshops called Cougar Cares that will teach skills to help connect with one another and recognize when a friend is in distress. It's also going to be good for you to create times in your schedule where you have some built-in support, whether that's participating in a discipleship group, doing one of our workshops, or even having that time of connecting with other peers from a class to study together. Since we're coming out of a year and a half of being mostly isolated, it's going to be so important to have some built-in structure of connection. Otherwise, we automatically might just continue that sense of withdrawing from us. So we're going, so just do a quick check-in. Everyone okay? Anybody have questions in the chat? I see a chat question. Nathaniel, is there a question there?
No, I think we're good. I just wanted to mention commuter life assistants are available as well to connect with you and help you connect with the campus. Even if you're not living on campus, they serve a similar job to an RA, but for those of you that are commuters, and I know we have a lot out there.
Oh, good. Thank you, Nathaniel, for sharing that. So in regards to mental health tips, it's going to be so important now, as much as it was during the pandemic, to make sure you're creating a routine, right? So when are you waking up, making sure you're scheduling your time of having your breakfast, connecting with God, having your time of devotion, having your quiet time, really eating those healthy meals, sleeping the 8 hours a day, connecting to students on campus, exercising. And again, if you need support, there is the counseling available and it's available to you for free. And for our grad students, there's also that additional platform that allows you to have more flexibility in scheduling your sessions. So because our situations are unique to us, it is really important to try not to judge ourselves harshly based on what other people are doing. Maybe we notice that our roommate has like tons of social connection and we're feeling like, why am I not? Even if you're developing one or two really good friendships during this season, that's all you really need. That's what research shows can create a sense of community is if you at least have one or two really good friends during this time. So don't worry about the quantity, just focus on that quality of time that you can create with one another. And recognize that everyone is facing uncertainty and challenge, and we have no choice but to move through it as best we can with our own coping mechanisms. And be aware of what you feel comfortable. I think we are going to all still be required to wear masks indoors, and if we're in close settings, outdoors. And if you're going, off campus with a friend, be respectful. If your friend feels most comfortable wearing a mask, wear your mask too, and talk about that. You don't want to feel like you can't go out at all. You want to make sure you're practicing ways to stay safe. This is also a time to create new meaning. So again, we want to normalize and validate the impact of COVID. This is a new feeling for us to have to reconnect, and the same experiences or settings can elicit very different responses. So again, we might have that excitement and joy. Some of us might feel shame or guilt. Depending if we've had losses during the season, it might be hard for us to feel like we can enjoy being back at school when maybe others can't. Again, there can be the anxiety, fear, anger, resentment, but we can also feel empathy, compassion, relief, and then can still feel overwhelmed. And there's the sense of, are we going back to normal, and what does that look like? So I think it's really this newness again of that this is a new normal, and it's going to continue to adapt and fluctuate depending on the circumstances, in our society. We still might have continued disruptions to our daily routine. Some things may reopen, some things may not. It may be hard for us to go back to in person classes when we're not used to that. So it's important to name that the same events or situations can create a very different emotions for us all. You could even find yourself having thoughts of judgment, surprise, or disbelief at some of the emotions that I listed, if you haven't experienced them in relation to COVID-19. But it's important to name that all our emotions are valid and that they're all normal responses to the stressors of the last year. And there's also a normal response to the newness of adjusting to the rhythm of the 2021-2022 academic year. So being open to the difference and being seen and heard on campus is what's going to be really important. So making sure you're in those safe settings of where other people can recognize your experience. As first gen college students, it may be hard for our families to understand the meaningfulness about us being back on campus. So make sure you're connecting to our first gen office and programming. As a student of color, if you're feeling like this experience has caused a lot more heightened distress, make sure you're engaging with other students of color to talk about your experience and get that support. And just recognizing as a friend, how can you be a support to another friend during this time? You also want to practice good boundaries of being aware of what can you commit to and what can you not commit to, and really using your communication skills well, of really sharing what you're feeling. So not feeling like you have to go along with the group if you don't feel comfortable. Being able to say like, I don't really feel safe engaging in a large group just yet, but love to, connect via FaceTime. And so during times of transition, which we're experiencing now, it's important again to ask yourself, what do you need emotionally, physically, spiritually, or mentally to thrive during this season? And so, from a blog that was written by Selective Health in 2020, they talked about a couple of strategies to help you during transition. So, during times of transition, it's important to look ahead, not backward. So, you can't change what once was, but you can choose how to live your life now. If looking into the past and longing for the past isn't doing you any favors now, choose to look ahead and focus on the future. Practice taking one day at a time. When dealing with change, it's normal to want to get used to everything this change is throwing at you right now, but that's unrealistic. So, change takes time and practice. So, instead of trying to do it all now and growing frustrated, give yourself time to figure things out. Add yet to the end of your thoughts. For example, I don't know how I will do in this class yet, or I can't figure this roommate thing out yet. Don't focus on the end result. Focus on what small steps you can slowly take today to work toward where you want to be. Slow and steady always wins the race. And a good strategy is also to keep a journal. So when we're going through times of transition, being able to take like 10 minutes a day to kind of just journal what feelings came up, what thoughts are you having, can really help you process cognitively what you're experiencing, and can also be a safe container for your emotional response. And this will also help you understand the why beneath your feelings, because you'll start to see what themes emerge. A next strategy is to surround yourself with support. So, again, talking to loved ones can be especially helpful when trying to navigate a new transition. And don't be afraid to reach out for a mental health professional if you want to be a part of our support group or even an online social media community. Connection is a key in navigating challenges and gaining wisdom from others who are facing similar circumstances. So even noticing in this experience, that you're all being proactive and learning strategies today of how to make sure you're doing those steps, when you're back on campus, to connect with others, because knowing that others are experiencing what you're experiencing will help you manage it better. And then there's also the skill of practicing acceptance. So even when you think your circumstances aren't fair or wish they hadn't happened, nothing you think or say will change reality. Even though change is inevitable, you can choose to accept reality and be willing to grow, or you can choose to live in the resistance, which is harder. So we always talk about this in therapy. There's this tension when you're wanting things to be a certain way and they're not. And then you can also practice acceptance. Doesn't mean you have to be okay with bad things continuing to happen to you, but you can also practice, okay, this is what is, and what isn't within my control of what I can do to cope with it. Another strategy is to create a list of affirmations or mantras. So you can say to yourself each day to be reminded of your strength and resilience. So this can be that this is only temporary, or, maybe it's reminding yourself of one of the coping skills that we're talking about and putting it on a post it, putting it on your laptop, reminding yourself. Or maybe it's really highlighting a verse in Proverbs that you're going to review, each day during this transition as a way of, building your spiritual health as well during this time. So when we look at our campus resources, I highlighted our office. You can go to the University Counseling Center website and be connected to more further information, but we do provide individual counseling, couples if both students are APU students, referrals to a community provider if you need more of that long-term work. We have workshops and groups that we'll be offering this season as well. The Office of Campus Ministry continues to provide pastoral counseling to students, and from my understanding, it'll be both via telehealth and in person, depending on the need. So that is something you can email them directly to set up an appointment. Then we also have the Office of Accessibility and Disability Resources and Accommodations. So if you have any medical or mental health disabilities, you can reach out to that office and get an application started so that you can review what resources you can benefit from during this season. And then there's the Student Center for Reconciliation and Diversity, and that's where our student ethnic organizations are and support. And the director there is Erin Hinojosa. You can email the office there with their email, and that way you can get a list of the different student ethnic orgs and organizations, see if there's one that you want to be a part of, you want to learn more about. And they will also be housing the first gen services as well in that office. So if you have questions about the first gen student program, you would want to reach out to them as well. And I'm just highlighting a few offices. There are more student support services on campus. There's the career office that can be of help, especially if you're looking for a work study position on campus. So make sure that you're using this time before you come on campus to research the website, download the APU Now app where you can get more information more easily, just so you're staying informed and you're really benefiting from all that we have to offer. And then we have the University Counseling Center groups and workshops. We'd love to have you join. Our Learning to Thrive During Difficult Times is a one-time commitment. It's an hour and 45-minute workshop. It's going to be offered on Tuesday mornings, Friday afternoons, and some other times. This will again kind of go into more detail of ways in which to manage transition and kind of recognizing the impact that COVID has had in our mental health. We're also going to be running our anxiety toolbox workshop, which is a 2-week commitment, and it's helping students learn how to reduce anxiety in their lives. And then Dr. Nathaniel Fernandez is going to be overseeing our peer educator program, and they do some great peer support programming. They have Wellness Wednesdays that they do live on Instagram. So please follow us on Instagram. We're APU Counseling, all one word, all lowercase, and there's going to be definitely updates on the programming as well. And then here's a list of our different groups that we'll be offering. If you feel like any of them seem like something you're interested in, again, please call our office and then we can get you set up with a solution session to review further, and then we can set you up with a screener to meet with the facilitator to see if it would be a good fit. And now I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Nathaniel Fernandez to share with us more about Cougars Care.
Yeah, so in addition to all of those therapy groups, we're also having a series of educational workshops similar to this one in a lot of ways, where our goal is going to be to teach you the skills that you might need to help take care of yourselves and others. This is something that I'm really excited about, and I get to facilitate primarily along with a lot of our peer educator staff. And so the nice thing about this is there's a whole bunch of different workshops where you can learn based on the topics that you want to learn about. And those of you that maybe are in undergraduate working on your nursing degrees or your psychology degrees or sociology degrees, or some of you that are beginning to enter grad school and things like CCSD or counseling or things of that nature, these are some really good basic skills to build your resume for entry-level jobs in those kinds of positions. So if you do attend 4 of these 6 workshops, we're happy to give you a certificate of completion that you can cite on your resume. Hopefully that can help give you a boost both in your own skills and in your confidence as you go out and apply for those internships and jobs. So this year we're going to be doing them live, both in person in the Wynn building on East Campus and over Zoom. So you can participate either way, whichever makes you feel most comfortable. You can find out all the information by visiting our website. You can always email us with any specific questions. And if you would like updates on this program, please go to that bit.ly link and give us your email, and we'll send out email blast just regarding the Cougars Care process. We won't flood your email box, but you'll get all the updates on this program specifically, so you can make sure to join.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel, for sharing about that. And I know it's a great resource for students. So definitely encourage you, if you fit your schedule on Fridays, to be a part of that to benefit from that resource. And that brings us to our last slide to kind of just highlight that all of our services are going to be available both online or in person. They're free, and it's for anyone, both undergrad or grad, who are enrolled. And if you need any further support after today's workshop, you can again call our office if you want to do a phone consultation to kind of discuss anything further, or if you wanted to set up an appointment, we can help you do that as well. We just want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to supporting you all during this time of transition. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we can open it up for questions.